It's Maria here from British English with Maria. Today we're talking with a fellow teacher, David. We'll be discussing AI, in particular Chat GPT.
Maybe introduce yourself. We have Sir David in the house.
Sir David, indeed. I don't go by Sir David. I just go by David. Hi, everyone. I am David from the website and social media tag Speak Like David. I'm no longer in charge of Speak Like David. I don't teach English anymore, but it's something that I did for probably close to 10 years. And that's how I met Maria, and that's how we know each other. We've worked on a few projects together, and here I am.
Here you are, and here we're going to talk about AI. So I proposed a few topics to you and then jumped on this one. So what made it stand out to you? Why is it important to you, maybe personally or professionally?
I wouldn't say it's important to me right now, but it's definitely one of the things that I'm the most curious about right now. I've spent a lot of time reading about it just online, particularly with all the hype about Chat GPT.
Sure.
And I gave it a test run as well. A few times just for fun, when I felt like doing a Google search on something, and it was related to my hobbies, cars, motorbikes, and that sort of thing. And I decided, okay, well, let's see if I can get the information I want more quickly, and if I can get it accurately from ChatGPT instead of digging for it through all these websites through a regular Google search. And it was really interesting. And of course, I started to get carried away, where I just decided to start asking it and giving it prompts that have nothing to do with what I originally started to search for. And it was just mind blowing. It's incredible just how much it felt, or how much it could feel like you're interacting with another human, even though you're not.
Does it actually feel like you're talking to a real person? Did you get that feeling from it?
Not in the sense of there being aspects of the other person's personality coming through, or things like their sense of humor and all of that. Not in that sense, but as far as how proficiently it's able to communicate in layman's terms. So the way that the sort of responses that it gives are kind of formatted as in the same way that we would write an email, is how I describe it. It's using English, and the English is perfect without any grammatical errors. And so for me, being an English teacher, a former English teacher,
you're impressed.
Yeah.
Well, I beg to differ on that one, because for me it gives the American version of the spelling, which you're fine with, but for me it looks odd.
You know what you could do then? You could actually tell it to write or spell using British English, and it will.
Right, it will do as told. So I guess it's not a proper human, right? Because humans will deflect and not always agree to do everything you tell them to. So I guess it has that advantage of being your servant, so to speak, right? Doing everything you ask it to. Have you tried writing swear words in there, just for fun?
Yeah, I did. Who wouldn't on their first time using ChatGPT? I did, and it was, and I think whenever it detects that you're expressing frustration or anger, it apologizes.
It must be British then at heart.
but I noticed that it wasn't perfect though.
Yeah.
Because the way that it learns or gathers its data is from which to then give you responses to your questions, is it gathers that information from all the interactions that it has with all of the users all over the world. And at least this was a couple of months ago when I was using it. I have read online recently that they've started allowing the software to crawl the internet to gather its information and learn from there on its own.
That's really exciting and scary as well.
Yeah, it is. It's now also going to be responsible for filtering through all the information that it finds on the internet and figuring out what's accurate and what's not. But if they're able to make it do that well, then it's going to be pretty cool. But so basically, I asked it some questions about I asked it, tell me which motorcycles are like within this set of criteria.
Yeah.
And I think what I asked it, okay, I remember now. I asked it which motorcycles between 600 and 1,000 cc have upside down forks. I think that's what I asked her.
That's a very specific question, yeah.
Exactly, it is very specific, and I couldn't find like an article that just had like this list of top 10 motorcycles with these.
Exactly, and no one actually put it together because you have to do a lot of research to pull that information together, right? That's a really specific answer or question.
And it gave me a list. The problem was that there were some motorcycles on that list that I knew didn't have upside down forks. They had like normal forks. And so that's when I thought, you know what, I'm gonna see what happens if I give it some admonishment, if I basically tell it off. And that's when I wrote some nasty words, and I said,
you insulted its intelligence.
I said some nasty things. I said, this is
how dare you
wrong.
lie to me? Do you think I'm an idiot?
And what was weird though is at that moment, even though I corrected it, and it actually it seemed to accept the correction because, oh, my apologies, you're right. This motorcycle doesn't have that particular specification. And then I asked it the question again. Okay, so can now tell me which are the 10 motorcycles with these specs? And it gave me the exact same list. So it didn't up its database of information from the correction that I gave it immediately.
That's interesting.
So I'm not really sure how that works. I think there might be like a delay, or it might need to the information that it gathers might need to go through some sort of process.
Maybe it's like humans, right? You tell them the right information, they still take time to process and to actually make it part of their knowledge. So maybe that's how it works. Yeah. Well, I like how it apologizes and admits its mistakes, which humans don't always do. So I guess that's an advantage over humans that it has. Are you worried about the future of AI? I mean, ChatGPT, for example. Do you think we should be worried about how it's going to impact our lives, take away our jobs, and maybe take away our ability to think, which is another worry some people have? Do you have any of those concerns, or perhaps other concerns on your mind?
The biggest concern that I have is no different. I don't think it's going to be any different whether ChatGPT becomes mainstream or not in terms of how we search for and gather information on the internet. The exact same problems that exist now with what we could call like the big tech companies who are the gatekeepers of all our speech and all our information. I think those same problems will get carried over to ChatGPT. So whoever it is that is ultimately in charge of writing the software code that decides what information is presented to us and what information is withheld from us as users. I think for those people to have so much power over the information that we have access to, over the information that the whole world has access to, I think is a very dangerous thing. And I would even say that to be the arbiter of truth to the whole world would mean that you are much more powerful than the quote unquote most powerful politician in the world. I think currently in the current digital age. So that I'm not sure what sort of solution would resolve that, but that's a problem that exists right now with even with Google and Facebook and Twitter and all these big tech companies.
Absolutely.
I think that'll continue to exist when we change the way we search for information.
Absolutely. I think that's one thing when I get information from ChatGPT, I'm thinking, where's it coming from? Who's filtered it? How was it processed? I mean, you still have those questions and doubts when you find stuff on the internet through articles or certain websites, but at least you can kind of track where the information is coming from to a certain extent. You can look at the author's name, etc. Whereas with ChatGPT, you have absolutely no control or knowledge of what's the source of its information. And for me, that's the scary part, because I think when we stop questioning what's in front of us, that's the real danger. When we stop questioning information. And I think when it's at your fingertips with such ease, people will eventually stop questioning, especially when it improves and stops giving you false or incorrect information.
Yeah.
So that's my concern.
I mean, if you just go on the internet and you were to watch either YouTube videos or go into like the comments thread of any controversial video or bit of content, you'll find debates taking place, right?
Sure.
And how often do you come across the line, Google it? Just Google it.
Absolutely. Right? It's become a catchphrase, right? It's become a verb to Google something, right? It's become an action. Right.
That line is being used as a means of presenting evidence for an argument when an argument is contested, basically. So these two people would be having a debate about something, and one person would be like, where do you get that information from? Or how do you know that's true? And the person who's being asked how would respond with, Google it. But just because you search for something and it shows up in a Google search result doesn't automatically make it true, right?
Or trustworthy, right? Yeah.
Exactly. Absolutely. Like every person who uses Google to find these articles or websites or blogs and whatnot, these different sources of media, each of us as users have a responsibility to vet and dig and validate the information that we're presented and test to figure out whether or not it's actually reliable, trustworthy.
In theory, yes. Yeah, I agree with you.
I think in practice, very few of us do.
Yeah. We all know what we need to do. Very few of us do it. For lack of time, we're lazy, have limited amounts of energy to go through everything and to question everything. So we have to kind of go on autopilot sometimes, and Google and Chat GPT is allowing us to do that. And the more we do that, the less self-reliant and questioning we become as human beings. And I think for me, that's the real danger of it all. I don't know how to stop it. I don't know how we continue questioning things. But it's always been the case of, we were fed information by the governments, throughout the history, throughout the times, propaganda and so on. So, like you said, if someone's feeding that information to ChatGPT and we stop questioning it, it might take years before we get there. But at the end of the day, relying on one source is never a good idea, is it?
Yeah. If you think about just the way that history is taught in schools, for example, and the way that history is taught, let's talk about perhaps the world wars. And I think it's appropriate that they're called the world wars. They're wars that so many different, right? So in almost any part of the world, like I've moved around a lot and I've lived in a few different countries, and no matter where I go, some form of or some sort of a narrative regarding the world, one of the world wars at least, is taught as part of the school curriculum. So, for example, it's taught here in Japan, it's taught in Brunei, where I grew up, it's taught in Australia, where I went to university. And what's interesting is that some of the finer details of whatever is taught, of the particular events that are perhaps part of the curriculum, would be different in the way that they're taught in different countries.
Absolutely.
And I didn't realize this until I was much older.
Oh, really? I have my parents, because my mom's Russian, obviously my dad's English. They always fight over history as to what actually happened and took place, because they were taught completely different things.
Right. But here's the weird thing. When I was in school, I was taught that there are two different kind of categories for where you get your information, how you cite, basically what sort of citations are allowed on your essays, right? So I was allowed to write down or take information from BBC and write that as in my
that was a trustworthy source, considering according to them, right?
I wasn't allowed to use Wikipedia, for example.
Yes, for sure. Right. But do you think we'll be able to quote and cite ChatGPT? Because if we use ChatGPT, how on earth can we cite ChatGPT? That's not a citation, is it? That's not really a source.
It's not, but if information is accurate, then I don't see why not. Right? But it wouldn't be a source, though, right? You'd have to ask. But here's the thing: you could always ask ChatGPT.
Could you? Have you tried that? What's the source of the information?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just typing it right now. Mm-hmm.
It will even give you links, or it won't give you specific links to actual articles or anything like that. But I think it will point you in the right direction as to where you can do more research.
Kind of like Wikipedia, right? Where it does.
Yeah.
So different websites. Okay.
But go back. There's one thing that I was about to say. When I was in school, textbooks would be considered reliable sources.
Right.
So I was allowed to, write down information cited from textbooks. But now, as an adult, I'm thinking, man, those textbooks were not necessarily accurate, were they? Because the textbooks
they're biased. They're written by one or maybe a couple or three authors at most, and they're written for with a specific viewpoint, maybe sponsored by someone.
Exactly. So, as an adult, probably like the biggest thing that I wish I could tell my younger self is there isn't such a thing as a perfectly trustworthy, reliable source of information. I think for as long as there are humans involved, we're always going to carry our biases into that.
Absolutely.
Whatever. So, what about you, Maria? What would you say are perhaps some of your biggest fears or worries with?
Well, I did mention the stop questioning, stop thinking, for sure. I'm using it quite a lot in my lessons to just generate a few ideas and to get a few sentences with a certain word, a phrasal verb. So for me, I would say it's useful as a tool as long as we use it as a tool and not as a source of knowledge and like without questioning it. So I think if we can retain that ability to be not judgmental, but to kind of filter through the information and to investigate, to dig into it a bit more, we'll be fine, I hope. But I think there is something scary about a program being smarter than a human being. But let's wait and see what happens. I guess we cannot stop the development of technology. I think at the end of the day, we can stall it, we can try to postpone it, but it is developing in its own way and learning from itself as an intelligent organism. So I guess we just need to adapt at the end of the day. So maybe there's no point being fearful, but I guess there is every point in just learning how to work with it, how to use it to your advantage, and how not to let it overpower and overtake, human beings. But let's wait and see. I think that would be my conclusion on the topic today. Do you have any further thoughts or final thoughts to share?
I think there's one thing which I would say as advice for younger people, people in their teens who still haven't figured out what they want to do for a career. If we were to go 10 years ago, at least in India, IT was the big thing. If you wanted to have a lucrative career in something that was fairly secure, if you want to have a secure future, you would go into IT or engineering. That was the thing. But right now, I would say, okay, whatever it is that you decide to do in the future, choose something that is way too difficult for AI to do.
Any specific professions that you think? I mean, I guess manual professions are
exactly
definitely
manual labor sort of professions. I think are
to a certain extent, of course, not the factory like production and stuff. But sorry.
Yeah, things that require craftsmanship, where you need to be creative and still work with your hands. I think those sorts of skills can't easily be replicated by machine just yet.
Although to a certain extent, a lot of paintings are created by, AI, I suppose. They can be done digitally. So that's replaced a lot of the actual art. So again, I guess it depends on what sort of craftsmanship, how much it's appreciated by the society, and if people are willing to pay the extra price for it.
Yeah. Take, for example, a trade like plumbing, right? Like, I'm sure if you even with existing technology, you could build a robot that would go to any house, look at any sort of plumbing problem, diagnose it, and figure out a solution, and actually, move its arms and tools to repair it. But I think just how ridiculously expensive that would be compared to just hiring a regular plumber.
I wouldn't be so sure. They're getting more expensive by the hour, if not by the day. It's But I get your point. Yeah, or something like massage. I've never been in a massage chair that could replace getting a proper massage from a professional human being. Yeah, we have to keep referring to people as human beings now, just to distinguish between AI and human beings. It's an interesting concept in its own right. But yeah, I'm sure there are still some professions, and even technological or techie professions, they still require creativity, ability to synthesize in a way that AI still cannot do the same way. So for now, we're safe, but let's see as it develops what's going to happen. But I think we need to be willing to be flexible, to retrain, to upgrade and advance our skills, and just to mold ourselves for the new world. We cannot just, I think the new future is coming at a point, and we just have to be ready to embrace it and be ready for it skills-wise.
Yeah.
That's probably the best way of dealing with it. So this was an interesting discussion. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you for having me, Maria.
All right. I hope you guys enjoyed listening to us today. Maria and David in the house.